And what's this called? This is called Transforming Personality into Essence. And it talks about the emergence of essence. Here's the emergence of essence for type 6. To me, when I read that and connect with that, that is everything that my ego wants externally, because when it gets it externally, then it will be. But ultimately, no, it won't work. And this talks about this being ever present. This reads about how you liberate yourself, rather like a carrot on the stick in front of the donkey or the horse or whatever. You know, it's like and it's constantly I want, and not because that will never work. Because as far as you go towards it, you know, you've got that temptation and that tendency to keep going towards trying to get this carrot. But however many little bites you get at it, you never get the full carrot. It never feels satisfying enough. Ever. So like the Rolling Stones say, I can't get no satisfaction.
Right, yeah.
So what we have to become is the carrot, so that we stop looking for it and reaching for it and running after it and putting all our energy into trying to get it, so when we get it, then we can be. We become the embodiment of what that is.
Right.
And our liberation is we stop wanting anymore. Like where the Buddha said, if you end craving, you end suffering. So you end wanting, you end your suffering. And so a lot of this is about surrender. And so we surrender to what the ego is wanting, because it'll never get there. Never, ever get there. And trust me, I've worked with a lot of wealthy people. I've worked with successful people. I've worked with people who are on the fringes of fame, and it's still not, you know, they're never there. And so someone like Eckhart Tolle to me has always been very inspirational, because he's a type 5. Many of type 5s normally are very shy. Depending on how evolved they are, even if they're relatively evolved, they probably wouldn't put themselves in the public eye as much as he has done. So, for example, 5s move to 8 on the Enneagram. So like you said, are you always your type? Well, no, you positively move to another type and embody the positive aspects of that type. So for Eckhart, Eckhart's a 5 and he's moved to 8. 8 is mastery. And the underlying fear with 5s is incompetence and incapability. So there's an incessant thing of, I want knowledge, because when I get that knowledge, then I'll become more masterful, and I won't look, and I won't be incapable. On here it says basic fear, helplessness, incapable, incompetent. And the ego fixation is on stinginess, retention. So they gain this knowledge and they just tuck it away. But what happens is that it's still not enough knowledge, and they want more knowledge. And then they'll tuck that away. And then they think that somehow enough knowledge will finally protect them from this fear of being helpless, incapable, and incompetent. It doesn't. It's not going to work.
Right.
So what they have to do is liberate themselves from that. And that's greed, because it's a greed for knowledge. So their liberation becomes letting go of that temptation of replacing direct experiences with concepts and moving into non-attachment. So they move forward despite not knowing everything.
Right.
And where Eckhart is now, as a lovely spiritual teacher, I'm sure he's still learning, but he just returns to the very principle of putting himself in the here and now, the present moment. So 2s, the liberate, I'll go on and talk about wings in a sec, but 2s, liberation for 2s move to 4, and the positive part of 4. And that is being able to meet your own needs. And that's when 2s end up descending into humility, and they overcome the pride, because the vice is, the passion is pride. It's, look what I've done to help all these people. Look what I've done, look what I've done. But actually it's to become humble and to let that fixation go as much as possible, and you step into holy freedom and holy will. And that's surrendering to the divine, the universe, life, God, oneness, all that is, whatever you want to call it. Love, if you want to just call it.
Yeah.
And so you become a vessel for the divine, and you are guided by your heart and you are there for the totality, for humanity, not for Cara. It's you're working for humanity in that way. And so you liberate your suffering in that way. The suffering will always come about from the fixation and point of I, identification with I, the individual. And because it's always I want, because when I get, then I can be. And that's the point of suffering. It's always going to be.
Right.
So that your liberation comes from surrendering that and just being with all that is and living through your heart. And in this case, it would be moving to more humility and moving to the will of the divine, the will of freedom of all that is. And you're feeling that more and more. You've arrested your
when you put them in those terms. Yeah, I can understand what you're saying there.
And so you came to a point with relationships, and in fact, it's really healing and healthy for twos to have time to themselves, to find out who they are, to give themselves that love that they're usually giving to other people. And I know that you do that in your work, but if you're in a relationship as well, then usually probably Cara's all spent out. She's just like, oh God. And so you do have some energy to give to you, and or at least not to give to someone who's not ready to give it back to you. So you're learning self-love by doing that, and having your own space to heal and to evolve. So,
and I found that I'm actually quite enjoying that, and and not in a selfish way, but it's just like I'm not even to the point where, dating and that kind of stuff. It's just like why bother? I'm just perfectly content right now, So it's kind of evolved to that point.
And did that? How long has that been going on for you? Is that relatively
3 years?
3 years. Okay. What happened for you to have that point of where you went right? Okay.
A very, very nasty breakup where I was extremely angry and probably, according to my friends, a little too angry. Not that I was going out and, doing horrible things, but just in the things that I would say. And then the anger, and it was like, I couldn't understand forgiveness because there was no way in hell I was going to forgive this guy. And, over time and working on myself, it was like, okay, rather than, being angry and beating myself up for getting into this and should have knowing better and all this and that, it was more like, okay, just look at it as a life experience, something to learn from.
Absolutely.
And don't go there again.
Yeah.
And
so take the learning.
And with that came some forgiveness and peace.
Yeah.
And
because ultimately then you're taking responsibility and not coming in this victim mode of going, he did this to me, and when we do that, we take complete responsibility for our lives. Right. And then we take back our power.
Exactly.
So
and I was really in a place where I thought I would never forgive. Right. And, that's changed. That's changed. It's like, we were just two wrong people for each other, and it in hindsight, you can't ever determine what's going to happen really in such a thing. But I just chalk it up now to live and learn.
But he was right to give you the learning that you have now, because if you hadn't done that, you wouldn't have the 3 years that you've journeyed without even knowing what the Enneagram was. You'd actually gone down that road anyway. So with a little bit of understanding now, you can go away and there are books. There's plenty of resources on my website. There are videos. There's a wealth of literature on YouTube and even on like this Enneagram Institute. There's various other people who've written blogs and there's loads of stuff out there. But I'm going to champion this book because I really like it, and but this is, and it's not that expensive. It's about $20, 21 bucks, and you can even get it secondhand. Sort of like, buy them secondhand if you can't really afford it. Buy it secondhand. You probably get it on Amazon secondhand or even eBay. Somebody's probably gone, I want to change my life, and bought it for $21 and gone, what a waste of time, and then sort of put it on there for a couple of dollars. Do whatever you can, and but this is a beautiful book. And or if you don't get this book, find other books similar and find them in bookstores or whatever, and have a read of them. It's not about identifying with the negative stuff. Yes, that is helpful on some level. But what's more helpful is about learning about your type and moving towards the good stuff. Because every single one of the Enneatypes has extraordinary gifts. And I can't make that point more pertinent. But they all have pitfalls, of course. But just like you could say zodiac signs, sort of Leos sort of want to be dominant, sort of like here and in the, kind of like want to be center of attention, sort of like, and outdoing it. But that causes you problems. So on one level you have this, and on another level you have this. And it's the same with the Enneagram types. So they're all perfect, they're all beautiful, and humanity wouldn't have got to where it is without them. We can all evolve and move to our opposite tendency and liberate ourselves from our ego. And if the whole world did that, we would be living in a very, very different world.
Yeah, true.
So something like this book, where it talks about the emergence of essence with each one, sometimes I get very teary when I read them because they are absolutely divine and beautiful. So when you look at the emergence of essence, you can identify that with a lot of highly evolved people. And that's with all the types. So there are 9 lots of emergence of essence, and these are people who have liberated themselves from their ego. So this is a Christ-like consciousness, this is a Krishna-like consciousness, Buddha-like consciousness, this is Advaita teachings, this is everything good that you've ever heard of, where people have reached a level of liberation, of peace, and if you look at the Enneagram of personality, they have all really beautiful words. So for example, the 2 comes out from pride and moves to humility. What a wonderful quality, humility. The 3 moves from deceit and moves to authenticity. The 4 moves from envy to emotional balance, equanimity. 5 moves from avarice, greed, to non-attachment. 6 moves from fear to courage. 7 moves from gluttony to sobriety. Lust within 8 moves to innocence. Peacemaker, the 9, moves from sloth, which is self-forgetting and slowness and sort of disengagement, to action. And then 1 moves from anger to serenity. So now I've said that, the anger part, I'm picking up more that you're 2 with a 1 wing. Now the wings are, let's say Kara's a 2, so I'm pretty sure that's true. So she's going to have, if you imagine a bird flipping, she's either going to have a wing on 1 or she's going to have a wing on 3. Now she's got, of course, she's going to interact with both sides. She can get in contact with both of those sides. What happens often is that we have a more accentuated wing. So we tend to have a more developed side of that. And what I see is more of the 1. And I do see, particularly because you mentioned about getting angry at this past partner, that there's maybe a tendency to do perfectionism. Although I looked at you and I knew that you weren't a 1. I could tell that there was something about you.
In my younger years, though, I was very, very much a perfectionist.
And you've evolved out of that one as well.
Yeah.
And so you've developed
learned to mitigate that.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. And that's really hard, I know, for a lot of people, because they wouldn't like people to say, hey, I had perfectionistic issues. So you've to evolve out from that. So it's about dropping that. Everything needs to be right, done in a certain way. And it's not just about you, it's also the world outside. So it's someone could cut you up in the car and it's just like, God damn, how did you... It's sort of, it's that everybody in the world should be also perfect, and there should be the highly moral ones. So you can have that as a wing, and so I see that within you as well.
Yeah, I would agree.
But you have taken responsibility with that, again, without understanding the Enneagram, and begun to drop more of that attention. Because, of course, again, we can look at perfection and we can go, I want to be perfect outside in the world. And I want everybody else to be perfect. Because when we get it all perfect, then we can be. And as she laughs, she knows, it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
It doesn't.
I've tried
It
it.
doesn't.
I've tried it, but it doesn't work.
Tried it a lot.
Yes. And it always leaves us in suffering.